Carl Za, a geopolitical analyst and host of the Silk and Steel podcast. Carl, thanks so much for taking the time to join me.
Thank you for inviting me, Rachel.
It's great to have you back on the show. Now, I want to get your take on the latest here, as I know that President Trump told Axios on Monday that he decided to pause U.S. strikes on Iran in order to give negotiations another chance, as if they haven't had enough chances already, not because of the reports saying that his advisors were warning about the lack of interceptor missiles the U.S. is facing and how bad the situation would get if the U.S. carried out a major attack. And of course, Iran responded. Yet, we've had talks, we've had a deal, we had the MOU. The US has violated all of it. And despite all of these warnings, the US keeps returning to war. So, to start out, how do you view the current state of tensions between the US and Iran?
Iran controls the Strait of Hormuz, and U.S. has no military options to force it open. Which, by the way, was open before U.S. and Israel launched the illegal attack on Iran. The I don't know why Trump restarted the hostility. Maybe he thought that he can catch Iran off balance. This is very Trump, by the way. Trump, like you said, Trump is unpredictable in predictable ways because he always tried to uh, test his opponent. He's trying to set them off balance, catch them off guard. But the problem is, U.S. still has no cards in this game. United States is still running out of interceptor missiles. That has been a known issue since the 12 Days War. Wall Street Journal reported after 12 Days War, they used up about a quarter. They used up a quarter supply, and it has gotten even worse now. Like now, there's report coming out. The United States Military Command is trying to figure out which Iranian incoming missile to intercept in order to save their missile interceptor. That's how dangerously low their stockpiles are. And that situation is not going to improve anytime soon because China still maintain a embargo of rare earth shipment to U.S. military industrial complex. So they won't get their hands on enough rare earths to make more missiles anytime soon. That's why it was foolhardy for Trump to restart this conflict because fundamentally, United States still has no military options. They tried the aerial campaign, that didn't work. They tried the blockade on blockade, well, that didn't work. This is why he had to sign that surrender document at Versailles in the first place. And that then maybe my guess is maybe there's some Israeli pressure perhaps that drag him back to the war because we know Israel definitely do not want to see a ceasefire. They want to drag this war as long as possible. They want to weak Iran, but they know they cannot do it themselves, so they need United States to do it for them. But again, U.S. Has really been exposed as a paper tiger in this conflict. All the U.S. bases are being lit on fire by Iranian drones and missiles. And one of the demand of Iran is that U.S. withdraw from the region. Well, it looks like what Trump is now willing to concede on negotiation table is happened on the ground because Iran is systematically dismantling all the U.S. bases in the region right now. And these are the installations that took years and billions of dollars to build. They're not going to be put back anytime soon. The Gulf countries right now, they're probably evaluating their own options. Their old alliance with the United States was premised based on the fact that U.S. is supposed to protect them, extend a security umbrella to protect these countries. But exactly opposite has happened by hosting United States military bases, made them target. And I have a feeling there's probably some backroom dealing right now. These countries are probably sending out feelers to Iran, trying to negotiate some sort of understanding among themselves. Like countries like Kuwait, they haven't been able to sell oil for months now. And this is a serious issue. This is an existential issue for these countries.
Oh, absolutely. And you watch as they're in this situation where, like you were saying, the Strait of Hormuz was open before all of this. You have all of these Gulf states that were relying on the US. And yet the Trump administration didn't pick up the phone and tell them, hey, we're going to start this war. They just did it. And now these countries are having to deal with the consequences of it. And when you look at the state of US munitions stockpiles, I mean, this is not something that comes as a surprise. We've been talking about this for really years with the war in Ukraine and the Biden administration throwing everything that they could at it. And then those warnings that came up of, hey, if we send all of the munitions to Ukraine, we're not going to have them for the US. That was something that Donald Trump mentioned when he came into office and a concern he said he had. Then he pursues all of these wars. And of course, you have UN Ambassador Mike Waltz. He did admit that there is a shortage, right? And then he quickly turns around and tries to blame it on the Biden administration. But it's like it was the Trump administration that chose to start this war against Iran, not once, but technically twice if you count last year's version of it. What does that tell us about the US and the pressure they feel? I'm sure there's pressure from Israel, like you were saying, but also the pressure to be this global power that is able to go in and go, okay, we're going to wage war on you. And it's like the US is spending all of this money, racking up all of this debt on their credit card, literally and figuratively. And they don't have the money to back that up whatsoever. And now we're getting to the end of the line on that.
Yeah, because the military industrial complex is fully entrenched in Washington. And despite numerous presidencies that came to office promising no interventionist foreign policy, including Donald Trump himself, they always do the same thing, launching more wars. The perpetual war must go on in order to feed the machine. That is the army of lobbyists, think tanks, all arms manufacturers. They're profiting handsomely in this conflict, and as well as the big oil. The big oil, they're big Trump supporters, and they, Shell reported their first quarter earning report that they made out like bandit. And that was just the first quarter. The first quarter was like ending in March. So like this quarter, I expect, they have even more gangbuster profit. But that is a profit expense of everybody else, including average working Americans who are paying the higher price at the pump. But again, we know Trump don't care about the average Americans. He does care about his big donors, and those people he likes to keep happy.
Yeah, Trump is over here being like, oh, it's fine. The stock market's up, right? Oil prices haven't started. It's not $150 a barrel. We're fine, right? He's seeing just enough profit from that. And I did think it was interesting too. This it was a headline, but it didn't get a ton of attention in the news, at least not here in the West. But Trump imposed new tariffs of 10% and 12.5% on goods from 60 trading partners, including the EU and China, alleging that those countries failed to curb imports made by forced labor just as a temporary 10% global tariff expired. Now, he is getting a lot of backlash for this because obviously, when you say that a country is using forced labor with no evidence of that presented whatsoever, then that country is not going to be happy with you. But what I did find interesting was that China's Commerce Ministry revealed that during bilateral trade talks, Washington actually promised to keep their replacement tariffs under 20%. So technically 12.5% is significantly under 20. How do you see this move by the Trump administration? I mean, it's expected that Trump is going to put on new tariffs, but at the same time, he is still ruffling a few feathers here.
Yeah, again, this is Trump trying out the same thing. We mentioned again and again, Trump is predictable in unpredictable ways. He's trying to restart the tariff war the same way he restarted this crisis in the Strait of Hormuz, because he thought he can keep his opponent off balance, catching them by surprise. But nothing has fundamentally changed. US still have no cards, especially come to China. One of the big driver, I think, this latest round of the tariff increase is because they're not as satisfied that their first tariff war didn't get the result they wanted. One of their goal is to decouple from China, to force the big multinationals to move their supply chain away from China. What really happened was some more labor intensive assembly work was moved out of China. For example, Apple moved 25% of the iPhone production to India, and some other company moved their assembly line to Vietnam. But what really happened is what will has been moved is like the final and the most labor intensive part of putting everything together. All the components still come from China. All the machine tools still come from China. And they even need Chinese technicians and Chinese engineers to come and set up the machines and service the machines. So this is why China continue to go on to have record surplus after year. And so what Trump is trying to do, they're trying to use the so-called forced labor issue as an excuse. It's like, oh, China used Uyghur slave labor, right? That's now their tool in trade negotiations. Say, okay, so that's why you have to, all these countries, India and Vietnam, you're not sourcing your components carefully enough. These components are still coming from China. And at the end of the day, Trump still has no cards to play because all the cards are still made in China because China still dominates the supply chain. And China is still not giving him the rare earth that he wanted. This is another thing that he really wants China to lift the export control on rare earth. This ties to the US running short on ammunitions because they can't replenish their ammunition fast enough because China hold a stranglehold on the critical minerals, which they place restriction on export to U.S. military industrial complex. And there's also the incoming visit of Xi Jinping in United States, possibly in September. So this is, again, Trump is trying to set the stage, trying to gain some leverage on Xi Jinping before his visit, because there's probably a lot of negotiation happening in the background in preparation for President Xi's visit to United States. This guy is Trump trying to gain leverage, but he has no leverage. He has no cards to play in this. So I don't expect this new round of tariff increase will have any different result than the last time, except price increases for the American consumers.
Yeah, that's always how it goes. And yet Trump loves tariffs so much. I guess that goes back to what we were saying about how he does not care about the consumers. And just the fact that he would look at these countries and go, oh, well, you're using parts that are made in China. They're like, what else do you want us to do? Not provide a product to you? Like, that's where you get them. And speaking of the rare earth minerals, because I did want to talk about that a little bit and kind of the point that you were making, right? The US military industrial complex, they desperately need to ramp up production, to get out more ammunition, to be prepared with these interceptor missiles, right? There's so much that they want to do that they are dreaming of when it comes to maintaining their hegemony around the world, but specifically in West Asia, or at least trying to at this point. They're not doing too well at it. But when it comes to what China is doing, not only are they not letting up these restrictions, but they're expanding them. They increased export controls last month when they blacklisted two additional American companies. And then last week, they banned 14 European companies from shipments of dual use materials that could be used for both civilian and military applications. Europe really can't win here, right? They get hurt, whatever happens, whether it's they're deciding that they're going to, reduce their reliance on Russian energy, and then they start getting energy from the Middle East, and then the US wages a war against Iran. Now they're dealing with China and they're going, oh, wait a second, we also don't get the dual use materials. When it comes to just how much control China has and also how it's leveraging it, do you expect any change anytime soon, or does it seem like this is going to continue to be the status quo?
By the way, China put the export control on Europe is in retaliation of the European ban on dual use item export to China. Now, the thing is, China, Europe is now like they decide to go down with the ship. All the European leaders decide they have to attach themselves to Daddy Trump no matter what. This is why they're pursuing these suicidal policies that further isolate Europe in the world stage. As you mentioned, Europe is already cut off on the cheap energy from Russian gas, and now the Trump's war on Iran makes the matter even worse for them. Well, guess what the European leaders do? They go ahead and start a trade war with China, their biggest market, right? And this does not benefit Europe. This does not benefit the people of Europe. What the reason the European leader are doing this is they're trying to kiss up to Trump in hope that Trump will throw them a bone, and also to preserve their own position because most of them are in are where they are because of their connection to Washington, because of backing from United States. And so they are desperate trying to cling on that Atlantic relationship, even at the detriment of the European economy and the European citizens. Now, China, on the other hand, they are while they're you have to remember Europe has been buying a lot of the drone components, engines, cameras, electronic equipment, everything, and then they ship them to Ukraine, you know, to continue this proxy war against Russia. Now, this is the perfect opportunity for China. It's like, okay, well, you're gonna ban. Guess what? You're gonna ban dual use item, so-called dual use item to me. I'm gonna ban all these drone parts could be dual use. They are being used as instrument of war. You know what? You forget about them. So this is another case of European shooting itself in the foot in trying to please Washington, and they're not getting any return on that because Trump keep on placing tariff on them as well. So they're kind of in the kind of the half Stockholm syndrome, half because I don't know, like where the white countries must stick together, I guess. I think that's the only explanation I can give because it does not make any logical sense.
Yeah, and like you're saying there, it's not as if Trump is dangling all of these great things in front of Europe. It's like, what does Trump have to offer you? Protection from the threats that we're going to send your way if you don't listen to us? Because that's pretty much all the US has at the moment. They're like, yeah, we're protecting you from us if you don't team up with us. Oh, okay. Well, China's over here. They were trying to work with you. Now you don't want to work with them. So, okay, they're not going to work with you on this specific issue. But speaking of China's involvement, or at least alleged involvement, I feel like there's been a big uptick in the West of reporting saying that, well, Iran strikes, they're getting more precise, therefore they must be using Chinese satellite technology to carry out strikes on US military bases. Now, they've also blamed Russia, especially when it comes to Iran's targeting of CIA facilities in Saudi Arabia and Iraq back in March. Now, Iran and China, obviously, they're not coming out and saying, yes, this is the exact satellite we used, this is how we carried out this attack. But how do you see these allegations? Is there some truth to it, or is it also the West coming along and anytime Iran achieves anything, they've got to blame Russia, blame China, and really kind of put everything together in the mix there?
They actually have no solid evidence. There's no smoking gun that says Russia and China is doing this. They just say, oh, Iran got a lot better at their targeting. They must got help from China and Russia. On one hand, this is almost kind of racist belief that Iranians couldn't do anything by themselves, which is far from the truth. When I attended university in United States, there were many Iranian engineers. They're highly trained, very well educated in STEM. So Iran has the human capital pool to pull it off. But it is possible that China and Russia are providing assistance. I mean, why not? Why not? The United States is doing the same thing, through the European countries in Ukraine in their proxy war against Russia. Why can't China and Russia help Iran, their friendly ally? And what Iran is getting from China are like the chemical precursors to make missiles, ballistic missiles, which is in sharp contrast to China's export control of rare earth on United States, which U.S. cannot make more critical. U.S. lacks a critical mineral to make more missile interceptors, but Iran is getting shipment from China of the basic components that to be used for making more ballistic missiles, and that's the main That's the main weapon in Iran's arsenal right now. That's hitting all the U.S. bases. But again, China's statement has been clear. We support Iran's struggle for its territorial integrity and safeguard its sovereignty. What you can interpret it that however you want, but I think, yeah, probably that means China is supplying, continuing to supply Iran with material and maybe even satellite intelligence to help them in this effort. Because let's face it, Iran is the victim here. United States and Israel are the aggressor. You know, they have no right to complain about Iran possess the weapons to fight back. You know, that's what they're complaining about. It's like how dare they hit back when we're bombing your country?
Yeah, exactly. Like you can come in, you can, target and assassinate a country's leader, you can murder their school children, all that's fine, but then when they start hitting you back on your military bases that are placed directly around their country, suddenly the US acts like that's the end of the world. And it's like, well, isn't that why you put those bases there in the first place for a future war? Iran is just making it so that they get a little bit of action, I guess, while they're taking out those bases along the way. And it has been interesting to kind of watch the back and forth because, like you were saying, Trump comes out and he announces last week that Chinese President Xi Jinping will be visiting the US in September, he says. Now, at the time, he was saying, oh, we're going to be talking about artificial intelligence, that that's a big topic. I'm sure that will be one of the topics. Obviously, China is in this position of trying to get everyone to get along here, being like, hey, can we stop all of the war in this case, stop attacking Iran. Let's get the Strait of Hormuz opened back up. Obviously, they're not exactly over here arguing against Iranian control because China is still benefiting from the energy that is coming out of the strait and benefiting from Iranian energy directly. So, how do you view kind of the place that China is in, where on one hand they are keeping these export controls in place, trying to rein the US in a little bit, but then on the other hand, they're over here going, hey, let's all get along, let's try to pursue some sort of a deal, even though I'm sure Iran is over here going, look, the US can't be trusted, we've tried, our hands are kind of tied here.
Yeah, I mean, China is acting like the adult in the room here. Because this conflict is this conflict again started by United States and Israel, and this is what majority of the world do not want. Um, and I think, I think part of there's reporting that the one reason Trump is pausing the U.S. operation is because there's a other country are urging him to return to the negotiation table. This is probably through Oman and Pakistan, and like one of the reason originally Pakistan was chosen as the kind of mediating ground is because Pakistan has good relationship with Iran, the Gulf countries, United States, and China. China really don't like to take a high profile role in this. So, but they are definitely working behind the scenes, through Pakistan, trying to mediate this conflict. Because this is what Trump is doing is bad for the global economy. Trump himself admitted he said he doesn't want to be the Herbert Hoover who dragged the world to a depression, but right now he is doing a Herbert Hoover and somebody have to sit him down at the kids table and say, hey, look, these are rules and you better behave. And I think China is one that's acting as a rational voice right now and say, hey, let's just sit down, work through this. United States, this is what you're doing is benefiting no one, including yourself. But again, like the US has some institutional interest in continuing the war. There's the military industrial complex, there is the Israeli lobby. And one of the, you brought up Mike Waltz, the U.S. ambassador to UN. One of the reasons he brought out the ammunition shortage is because the Congress right now is trying to pass through a bill that authorizes additional military spending. And well, guess what? US can print all the money it wants, but they cannot print missiles. That's a problem. Pentagon sure would appreciate all the additional funding. I mean, that's all the Pentagon is good for nowadays. It's a grifting machine. But all the new additional congressional funding is not going to get them the critical minerals. It's not going to get them those missiles because U.S. has deindustrialized for the last 40 years, and now it's all like finance and AI bubble. All right. And like I'm sure one of the reason another reason Trump is pausing the operation is let's remember, as much as he's talking about the stock market being high, a lot of that is AI bubble. A lot of that money is in the AI bubble. And they're expecting to continue to fund the AI bubble with the Gulf Arab money. And guess what? That money is not coming in the current conditions. Like I said, Kuwait hasn't sold oil in months. And the longer the war drags on, the more the Gulf Arab countries will need to keep that money for themselves to rebuild their infrastructure. So I mean that is another reason I think a pressure point on Trump to bring him back to negotiation.
Yeah, I know it's this crazy house of cards where you have all of these different elements that can just topple everything over. And the last thing I wanted to bring up, when it comes to the situation with the energy supply, with the oil supply in particular, it's interesting because sure, if you look at the US and they're looking at the current war against Iran, even if they're not actively bombing Iran, they can look at it and go, "Oh, are we keeping energy from flowing to China or flowing to East Asia in general? Okay, that's not so bad for us, right? Our vassal states will hold on for as long as they can, but if we're withholding stuff from China, then we're good." Well, China has built up its strategic reserves, but when we get to the point where everyone's using their strategic reserves and everyone's getting to more of a desperate position, and then China looks over here and says, "Oh, we're going to need more of this supply off the global market," that could have a massive impact. So, what are you keeping an eye on when it comes to really the economic war that is at play here and the role that China also plays in that with not only the supply it's taking, but the demand it has at home and how it's balancing everything?
Yeah, so on one hand, the high oil prices is profiting all the U.S. oil majors. On the other hand, China is saying, you know what, we're not playing that game, right? China is the largest importer of oil and gas, and they said, well, you know what, I will just follow the traditional smart way of buying low, sell high. Guess what? We bought all this oil for the last 2 years while the oil was at historically low prices, and we built the world's largest strategic petroleum reserve at 1.4 billion barrels of oil. So we're good. No, thank you. We're not going to buy at inflated prices, and China actually voluntarily cut their oil import by half, which is about 5.5 million barrels of oil per day, which is huge. This is what has kept the oil price from breaking, $125 a barrel. Um, but again, that cushion could be disappearing because the Yemeni has restarted the operation in Red Sea. Originally there are about 20 million barrels of oil flowing out of the Persian Gulf before the United States started the war against Iran. After the war started, Saudi was still able to pipe their oil through the pipeline to the port of Yanbu and get shipped through Red Sea to the world market. And that's about 4.5 million barrels of oil per day. And UAE was also using their pipeline to go to Fujairah, just outside of the Strait of Hormuz. And that's about 1 to 2 million barrels a day. Well, guess what? Now Iran has shut down the UAE pipeline by hitting the port of Fujairah in UAE. And the Yemenis are shutting down the Red Sea, and the Yemenis missiles are now hitting the Saudi refineries and the port of Yanbu. So that is total of maybe 5 to 6 million barrels a day that's getting cut off right now. That's equivalent of the oil that China has reduced its import from. So all the buffer that was present now is fastly diminishing. Another thing, that reason why the oil hasn't gone stratosphere is everybody is drawing down their strategic petroleum reserve. Well, guess what? We're not 3, 4 months into the war. U.S. has only 1 month of crude oil inventory left. So the margin for error is getting very, very thin right now. All the buffers is disappearing very fast. So if the war is allowed to drag on, if Trump do not come to the negotiation table, it's going to be much, much worse than last time. Last time, the sky is the limit for the oil price. Um, but on the other hand, China was the nation that was best prepared for this, because U.S. Navy has been saying for decades, you know what, we're going to choke off China's energy supplies through the Strait of Malacca, and China's like, oh, really? Okay, that means I better electrify our country, but we better like switch to EVs. We better build more high speed rail, and we better try other way to get oil. China has a world most advanced coal to oil technology, which becomes profitable at $75 $75 a barrel of oil price. Well, guess what? Today's oil price is what, like $100. So China is just going to use coal to satisfy their hydrocarbon need. And yeah, so there goes the Washington's plan to squeeze China. And it turns out China became the price. China can actually set the price at the global oil market, being the largest buyer. They will just reduce their demand when the oil price is too high, and when the oil price comes down, they'll buy again, which makes total sense.
Yeah, exactly. And you watch as the US thought that they were going to have this whole pivot to Asia, that they were going to take on China while doing that very publicly. And China's over here like, okay, you can do whatever you want to do. But like you were saying, they are adjusting their energy needs, adjusting their economy, adjusting their the rare earths that they are allowing the US to get access to, because China's over here like, they're not going to wage a war on us, and we're not going to fund your war against us, essentially. If you want to work with us, then do that. But the US is over here acting like a spoiled child that can't get its war against Iran, can't get its war against China, is badly losing its war against Russia. And it's like, well, that's the position that you put yourself in. And it's hard to see Trump backing away or too much changing, especially as I know that Netanyahu's broomstick is landing here back in the US this week. So I know we'll continue to have a lot to talk about, a lot at stake here all around. And I always appreciate you taking the time to join me to break down all of the latest here. Carl's a geopolitical analyst and host of the Silk and Steel podcast. Thank you so much for your time and insight.
Thank you, Rachel. Anytime.
If anything in this video resonated with you, be sure to like it, share it with your friends, leave a comment. And as always, don't forget to subscribe. And if you want to keep up with all of my work, make sure that you're subscribed to my page on Substack. That's rachelblevins.substack.com. That's where you'll find ad-free videos and new weekly episodes of my exclusive series for paid subscribers called Sanctioned. You can also check out Sanctioned over on my page on Patreon. That's patreon.com/rachelblevins. As always, thank you all so much for all of your support, and I'll see you next time.